Wait, where? What? I'm in a box! Oh no. No, not the box.
This is the Escape the Zoo podcast. With your host, Daniel Clark.
Michelle, thank you so much for being part of the podcast. I'm super excited to chat. You have been around the world photographing lions and grizzly bears and polar bears, and I'm super excited to get into all those stories. But I thought a fun way to kick it off would be an observation that I found on your Instagram account, which is that your most popular photo is not of any of those animals. It's actually of your dog. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Well, last weekend, I went on the official Instagram page and they had a contest or a WHP furry thing. So I thought I'll tag one of my photos of the dog. Ginny Girl, I call her. She's an old English sheepdog. And when you throw a snowball up in the air, she jumps as high as you can imagine. And I tagged that photo and it got chosen and it's nearing 1 million likes.
Oh my
Seriously.
God. It's insane.
Seriously. I know. Ginny Girl is being, she's trending.
Wow. Did you ever think she would be a trending dog on Instagram?
Oh, she's a pretty popular girl on Instagram or Facebook page, but seriously, not on the official Instagram account.
Have you noticed like a huge follower uptick since then?
A couple of thousand, which is great.
Yeah,
it's
that's
great
amazing.
For me. Yeah, and just more exposure, and it just opens your world up. And it's the power of social media, right? It's amazing and so different, and something we're all trying to figure out. So it's kind of fun, especially when you have all these images of polar bears and grizzly bears, and then you post a dog photo, and poof.
Well,
but if you notice, all
I
the
didn't expect
popularity.
a dog photo of a snowball in the middle of April. Is it usually like that up in Ottawa?
No, it's the middle of April and it's been ice storm, snowstorm, cold. We're all in our winter jackets, boots. It's just crazy. Crazy. The ice storm was pretty bad here for a couple of days. Pretty scary actually. Driving around and walking, people are falling. Yeah, the power lines are down. Crazy.
Are you in like downtown Ottawa, or are you kind of like outside a bit? Like, is it a more remote area?
No, we're right in the middle of the city.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah, crazy. But hopefully summer, spring, let's bring on spring. Forget about summer. Just let's get on to spring.
Yeah.
So,
I'm in LA, so unfortunately I can't.
Oh yeah, sunny and warm all the time. Oh look, it's sunny. Oh look, it's sunny again.
It's funny. So this is my third year here, and it's the first year we had probably a good 4 to 6 weeks where it was low 60s for the majority of the day. It was actually like usually, I mean, the coldest it gets in the winter is probably like low 70s. And the amount of people complaining about the fact that it was in the low 60s for a sustained period of time, I loved it. I was like, oh. You can stay inside.
Great.
Like,
yeah.
Once you've been through a few Boston winters like I have, that was it's just funny to see what people eventually start complaining about.
Yeah. Crazy. But we do have something to complain about here, I have to say. But
yes.
Anyway.
But keeping on the same topic of cold temperatures, I want to dig into polar bears for a little bit. Polar bears are something I've always dreamed about going and visiting in their natural habitat, but obviously that's a pretty remote area to get to. And I just wanted to get a little bit of a sense of what the process is like to plan a trip like that and how you get out there.
Well, for me, I have two different ways. One, I'll go on my own, or two, I'll work for companies like I do Frontiers North Adventures or Adventure Canada. So we go out into the tundra. With Frontiers North, we go onto the tundra in large vehicles. They're called tundra buggies. And, large, massive vehicles that are able to get to places that you couldn't remotely get, that are so far off.
And how many people are those fitting?
Well, they can fit up to 40, but the trip that I go on, we go to Pass National Park or Cape Churchill.
Okay.
So there's only 10 per buggy, which is great because then you have both sides of the vehicle. So if the bear's on this side, then you go on that side. So you're basically shooting out of the window, or you could go on the back deck.
Oh my God.
But you're safe, right? You're in a safety position. So you're not on the ground with them. And a lot of times they'll come right up to the vehicle and they'll jump right up, and you can be nose to nose with them.
Really?
Yeah. And it's pretty cool.
Is it something where once you get in the buggy, like you know you're going to see a polar bear that day, or are there days you go out and you just can't find them?
Yeah, same with every wildlife, right?
Yeah.
When you go out, you have expectations that they're going to be there and that they congregate in this area to get out on the ice at the beginning of the season. And last year we went and the ice had come in, and then we had been told that we weren't going to see very many bears at all because they were all out on the ice. And then the ice went out again. The wind shifted and it took the ice back out. And then, there were more bears that were late coming from the land and going out. So we actually had some pretty amazing encounters. But yeah, some days you're skunked and you don't see anything. But it's not from a lack of trying, that's for sure.
Oh my God. And so if you're not in a buggy, what's the other alternative?
The other alternative is when you go up and you're on land or in a Zodiac. I've been in very close proximity to a bear just on land, and he was ready to charge, and unfortunately I had a guide in front of me, and that was a pretty scary situation.
Wait,
not one that I would recommend.
You said that so nonchalantly. Can we dig into that a little bit? Let's talk me through that. Like what were you doing? Who were you with? How did that come about? Okay, so we were testing out this new polar bear cabin in Polar Bear Alley. So it's between Churchill and Arviat. So Churchill's in Manitoba, Arviat's in Nunavut. Okay. And we were testing out these polar bear cabins. So really, you land the otter right on the tundra. And when we were arriving, we saw a bear on the beach. So it's just the ice is just starting to form. So the bears are anxious. They're getting ready to go back on the ice, and they're very hungry. They haven't eaten for months. And we landed, and my girlfriend said, the bear from the ice is here. Like, it's right there. So I had a 500 millimeter, so I was trying to take it out of the case quickly and put it on one of my cameras. Right. And she's like, there's a bear. I'm like, I know. I got to get my 500 out. And the guys were unloading the plane, our guides. And she kept saying, Michelle, there's a bear. I'm like, I know. So I finally got the 500 on my camera. But by that time, the bear was really, really close, and it was approaching. So I had too much lens. And I had my other camera with the 24-70 on. And so I left my 500 behind, and I just followed my guide. And before I knew it, the bear was in front of us, and he was talking Inuktitut to the bear and saying, big bear, don't come any closer. We're not here to harm you, and we don't want to be harmed. And just, trying to and never, ever, ever showed any backing down, any sign of nerves or anything. It was amazing to watch. But I was standing there realizing there was nothing else I could do. Like, I had to just stand there. If I moved, I was in big trouble. So the bear sat down, he put one foot forward, then the other, and he started looking out of each side of his head like this with his eyes. And my guide said, Michelle, the bear's going to charge. Wait,
like,
the guide turned to you and said the bear's going to charge?
Well, he didn't even turn to me. He just went like, Michelle, the bear's going to charge. Are you done taking photos? I'm like, hey, dude, don't wait for me.
Oh my! Well, what can you even do? What's going on in your mind at this point?
Well, I'm figuring if this is the way that it's going to end, I might as well have photos. So I might as well take photos and show that this is the last moment, or else I have a really good story. So yeah, it was really scary. And of course, when you're in these environments, you don't want any harm to come to the bears, and you obviously don't want any harm coming to you. But more importantly, you're the visitor in those environments, and you're visiting that polar bear in its home. And the last thing you want to do is interfere. But the guy did have to fire a ground shot, and then the bear went away. Not as fast as I thought it would, but literally we were in cabins that were right in the middle of Polar Bear Alley. So, one morning we had breakfast, and the guide walked out, and he turned the corner, and there was a bear. So they were all around us all the time. Yeah. So if we wanted to leave our cabin, we had to call them by radio and say, okay, we're coming out. And then they had to do a scope around to make sure that there were no bears around the buildings, and then we could change our location. But yeah, it's pretty terrifying. That's why when you're in the buggy, it's just safe. It's warm. You've got some cold air blowing into the buggy baby, but it's so much different when you're on land, and you have cold as well. So it's, yeah. And there was another time when I was in Wilpass National Park at Watchie Lodge, and we were so excited because we came across our first mother and cubs. And they're just right out. It's the only place in the world that you can actually go and see these cubs coming out of the den with their mom. And so we saw our first ones. We all got out. We set up our cameras, and you have to make a really quick choice, right? What are you going to take as far as lenses? And once you're out there, it's minus 50 with the wind,
Right.
Celsius. I don't know. At that point, I think Celsius and Fahrenheit work out to being the same.
Yeah, it's still really
It's
cold.
It's really, really, really cold. Really cold. So you have to make all the choices before you go out. And I put a 600 millimeter on with a 2x extender, and we all set up. And before I knew it, she was approaching us, and that was pretty wild too. It was pretty scary. But again, the guys are always there. You never go anywhere without a guide. The guys were right in between us and the bears very quickly, and then they brought in the vehicles. So it was a very controlled situation. But she approached us within about 100 feet, and then that's when they say, "Okay, that's enough," and they take their vehicles and they put it in between us.
Oh,
but pretty scary.
Yeah. Jeez.
And then I have like a 3-layer system on my gloves. So I have a thin layer, and then I have a little thicker layer, and then I have a big layer, like a seal skin or something that I can throw my hands into with a hand warmer.
Right.
After shooting. Obviously, you can't work your camera with these big mitts on, but I had taken off my second layer, so I was down to my thin layer. And you're so intense, right? Like the situation's so intense, and you're shooting, and you're watching this mother and their 2 cubs approaching. And then before I knew it, she was walking away, and I was like, I have to go in. My hands are frozen. And that tingling?
Yeah. No,
you are
I
from
did.
Massachusetts,
Yeah,
but you know it.
I've had
Anybody
it.
who's frozen, right? It hurts.
It's bad.
It's really bad. And I had frost freeze. I never frostbit my fingers, but I had what's called frost freeze. So I couldn't feel the tips of my fingers for about 2 weeks.
Oh,
It was
just
that
that feeling when the blood finally starts going back to them too is brutal.
So brutal. And it was hard to not cry. I was just like, oh. But there was one guy that was there before us that had a hole in his mitt, and he didn't know it. And he got frostbite, and then it was infected, and he had to be airlifted out. So, you got to be seriously aware of, your body and what's going on, but also obviously being dressed to make sure that you're not going to suffer those kinds of consequences.
Yeah,
either.
I feel like if my hand was getting frostbite, I'd feel a hole in my glove, but I guess if it's that cold, it goes away pretty quickly.
Yeah, and it numbs, right? And then when you're in that intense situation, that's the other thing. Your mind goes to, just, oh my God, there's a polar bear approaching. What's going to happen? And you're trying to photograph it. So the adrenaline rush is so high. But
I can imagine.
everything so you're not. It wasn't until when she walked away, and it was really hard to even walk away then because I didn't know if she was going to come back. I didn't know if I was going to miss a shot, but I just knew that I had to go get my hands warm.
Jeez, that is absolutely mind blowing. So when you were on the ground, the guide has is it a pistol or a flare gun or what that he shoots on the ground?
Yeah, he's a full rifle.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. But again, it's not something that you want to happen. You want to see happen. You don't want any harm to come to anyone, and you certainly don't want to be shooting a firearm.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
You're the second photographer I've talked to. The other was Tony Wu, and he does a lot of cetaceans, and he was talking about the first time he photographed a sperm whale, and he genuinely thought they're carnivorous, that it was going to eat him. And both of you had the same reaction, which was, well, if I'm going to go out, I might as well take some good photos. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think that would be my reaction. I'd be like, what the hell? I'm getting out of here. Or I'd be like crying or like seeing if I could call my mom. I don't think photographing would be the first thing in my mind.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, there was nothing else I could do, right?
Yeah,
that was
true.
it. There was nothing, I might as well document it.
So do you know how the polar bear population is doing up there? It sounds like there's a decent number of them, but do you know that video Paul Nicklin posted this year of the polar bear starving? which was heart wrenching. I just wanted to get a sense of if you know what the situation's like.
I personally, I'm not a biologist or, a conservationist. I'm not a scientist, but when I do go up to the Nunavut, I always ask the guides what their thoughts are on the polar bear population. And from what I hear from them, it's healthy and they're seeing more bears than they ever have before.
Oh, that's good.
So, it's tough because I personally haven't seen a lot of skinny bears. I've seen very healthy bears. I saw maybe one skinny-ish bear in Churchill this fall, or this last past fall. So, it depends. I mean, that was a pretty telling, story of that polar bear and capturing that situation. So, yeah. But from what I understand from the Inuit, they think everyone that I've talked to that it's a good, healthy population in the Nunavut area anyway.
Oh, that's good. You mentioned you're not a conservationist. Can you elaborate on what your passion is behind photographing the animals? And do you feel like a need to step into the conservation side of things, or do you try and stay out of it? Or I just know everybody I've talked to has had such a different perspective.
Yeah, and I think my comfort level is sharing with the world my images of places, especially in Canada, that so few people get to see. And the importance of taking better care of our planet. I'm a photographer, and that's my role. So I can bring imagery to the world and say, this is what we have to lose if we don't take better care of it.
Right.
But I find that there's a line that I don't want to cross because I'm not an expert in that. But I can use my work to help tell the story and the importance of taking, a better look and better care of our planet.
Yeah, and it's a tough balance because you want people to appreciate things so that they fear losing those things, right? And a lot of times it's always hard, at least like in the work that I've been doing too, is trying to find the balance between you want to show the negative side of things to be like this, we're losing these beautiful creatures and we want to take care of them. But if people don't appreciate them in the first place, then they don't really care, or they just tune out to the negativity. So finding that proper balance of look at what this animal is, look at how beautiful it is, and these are all the amazing things that it can do. Oh, and by the way, this is what's going on with it. It's one, hard to strike that balance, but it's also interesting to see the different approaches that people are taking to fill the different roles in telling that story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I always try the positive approach, and even look at the Ginny girl photo on Instagram. I mean, if you look at the majority of the people that are liking those photos, they're happy, they're dogs, they're animals, there's a connection, and that's what people are drawn to, and that's what they like. And every so often you get that powerful image. There was one the other day about the whale, I think it was the sperm whale or right whale that was dead on the beach with a mouthful or body full.
I saw that. That was brutal.
Right? But that's the impact of the polar bear that Nicklin and Christina Mittermeier posted. I mean, those are the ones that really, really stay with you. They have that impact for sure. But I think it's the right balance between having the negative and the positive. And I like the approach of the positive better to start with.
I think that there's certain photos too where there's times where you'll see the Nat Geo photographers or whatever that are talking about the conservation issues, but the certain most powerful ones like the polar bear and like that whale with all the plastic in it, you don't even need the words or the understanding. It just kind of slaps you in the face. That plastic one I thought was Photoshop when I first looked at it. That was brutal.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I had to look at it as well. I have one of a polar bear, and when I do my speaking engagements, it's a balance of here's all these great photos. Well, here's all these great animals, these beautiful photos of these creatures, and then all of a sudden I'll throw a polar bear eating a plastic oil bottle, or somewhere, because they don't see that first. They're looking at this beautiful lit, the beautiful sunlight on this bear, and then they look down and realize that it's eating a plastic container. So I try to pull it in, but I'm a messenger, but I'm not an expert in climate change or in conservation.
Right. Sometimes you just need to see the beauty of things while you're there too, to care about when they're leaving. Can you talk about some of the other animals that are up in the Arctic?
Yeah,
Like, when
there's
you're on those trips?
this last year, this was the most exciting thing for me. We actually saw a blue Arctic fox. Have you ever heard of a blue fox?
I have. They're gorgeous, but they're
Oh
not
my
blue,
God.
right? They're like kind of black.
Yeah, they're gray. They're more
gray?
like a gray. And I didn't even know a blue fox existed. So we were going out, we were on the tundra, we were looking for polar bears, and then we came across this fox, and I was so excited because I thought it was a silver fox. And honestly, after being up there so many times, I have never photographed a silver fox that wasn't in the trees or, it was just
Right.
plain right out there against the snow. It was a beautiful setting. It had this ice-covered rock in the background. It's just like, yes, this is awesome. It's a silver fox. And we were photographing it. It's like, that doesn't look like a silver fox. There's something not right. But I never knew about a blue fox. So it wasn't until we went in and I was sitting at my computer and Jeff York from Polar Bears International walks in and he was on the other buggy and he says, "Hey, Michelle, how about that blue fox?" And I was like, what? What? Blue fox? He said, "Yeah, it's a blue-faced Arctic fox." So that was super, super cool. And so you have all variations of fox, and you have hares, you have narwhal, beluga, bowhead. That's really fascinating to see those whales.
Oh, you've seen
especially the narwhal.
narwhals?
Yes, and I've swam with them too.
What?
What?
One, I just want to. When I saw those, I think the first time I ever heard of a narwhal was watching Elf with Will Ferrell, and and he's like, "Say hi to your dad" or whatever. But I thought they were like a fictional character, like a unicorn. This is making me sound really dumb, but it's true.
No,
like, I just didn't
a lot
know.
of people.
But then I saw a
people.
photo, and I was like, "You've got to be kidding me! These things exist." But
Yeah.
talk to me. Were you worried about getting stabbed when you were swimming with them?
No, but I never saw it. I only saw a narwhal that had a small tusk. So I didn't see anything with a big tusk. But I wasn't even going to do it. I was with these guys that were going into the water, and Todd Mintz is one of my great friends, and he was going in, and they all looked at me and said, "Why don't you try it?" I'm like, okay. All right. I'd never been in a dry suit before. So they geared me all up, and then as soon as I got in, all the narwhal left. Like, seriously, I got in and I was like, "Are you kidding me?" But when I looked under the water and I was in the Arctic Ocean, I couldn't care less. Like, it just became so much more than, shooting or experiencing the whales. It was like, I'm doing something so far out of my comfort zone. And it was just so fascinating and beautiful and mysterious. And the adrenaline was rushing. And,
I can imagine.
Yeah. And then Todd, I said, "Can you just stay in the water with me a little bit just to make sure that I'm okay?" Because I'm a pretty good swimmer. I've swam since since I was born, basically. But I was just a little worried about going into the Arctic waters, and I was fine. So he got out. And then it took 52 minutes. And then finally my guide said, "Michelle, there's a narwhal." And I put my head down, and I was just snorkeling. And it came right underneath me, and it stopped. And it stared at me. It was like it was 4 feet below me. And then it went on, and I looked back, and then I had 6 more glide right underneath me.
What?
Yeah, and it was 52 minutes that it took. So by that time, the cold had started to seep through my body, and I was just like, I've got to get out now, which was unfortunate because I would have stayed if I could, but I couldn't. My body couldn't take it. So I got out. I couldn't even take off my hood. I couldn't take off my flippers. I was just so cold. My hands were frozen. Again, my hands. Yeah, but I vowed, and then I haven't gone back yet. And I hope to one day have that experience again because it was just absolutely incredible.
Are they up there year round? That's a crazy story.
Yeah, well, it was spring when we went. So we were going out to the flow edge. So it's where the ice ends and the open water starts. So the next stop is Greenland. So you go out by Skidoo and Comatic to the edge of the ice, and then you camp it there. So you're camping amongst the polar bears and the whales and the walrus and the seals and the birds. And each day you go out to the flow edge and you more or less wait for these animals to come to you. It's the only place in the world that you go and you really literally just wait for these animals to come to you. It's incredible.
Oh, that's amazing. Because I was talking the other day about how another thing that was kind of like a mixed bag is ecotourism, and how ecotourism has been a really interesting way for animals to get highlighted and for people to appreciate the animals. But then as a wildlife photographer, you go to some of these places that you used to be able to get intimate moments, and now it's just packed with people. It's cool to know that there's still places out there that exist, like the Arctic, where you go and it's literally just you and the elements.
Yeah, well, you got to be crazy enough to want to do it too. And not crazy, or just you have to have the financial means, and then you also have to have the, you have to have the mindset. You're going out to camp for 7 nights in a small tent on the ice amongst polar bears.
And the financial means is an interesting point. Like when you go out to these, are they typically assignments where you're like, okay, like they want me to go out and this is good, or are you like, I'm going to go there, get a bunch of good footage and shop it around and hope that I can make some money?
Both. Earlier on in my career of going to the Arctic, it was more or less an investment, and it still is. Sometimes there's no doubt, and it's those trips that I've wanted to do and I haven't been able to do yet. And I think it's really important to be able to do that as well, because it certainly puts me in a position that I have to know what it's like to pay. I have to know what it's like to invest, and then it puts real value on your work as well. Not that it doesn't with the others. That's not really what I'm saying at all. But it's nice to have that balance, and it kind of breaks both the pocketbook a little bit. But
right.
it's that it's an investment, and it's always an investment in photography. The other times when I'm going and I'm working, it's a whole different ballgame. So when I go and I'm funding it myself, and I'm in these situations, then it's for me, and that's a real beauty too, that you're shooting for you and not on assignment, and not having to come back with anything or be proven to anybody or whatever. You have your own creativity, and I think that opens up your power even more. I think,
Right.
your opens up the power of your creativity, I guess.
Especially when you are going on these trips, and I mean, there's obviously like a certain amount of luck involved with being able to find certain animals. And when you're going for yourself, you can kind of just go with what's around. I mean, you don't want to be sitting there being able to photograph a blue Arctic fox and be like, shit, I only have 2 more days to get these polar bear shots. I can't spend my time doing this,
Mm-hmm.
It just gives a little more freedom.
Yeah, and when you're teaching or when you're working, you're in a different mindset as well, right? So you're with the clients, and you're making sure that they're okay, and you're taking the back seat, and it's a completely different mindset for sure.
Oh, do you do a lot of guiding?
Yeah, there's trip leading, and I take on small groups to these remote areas. Not all the time, but some of the time. And then other times I'm working as a resource photographer. So it's kind of a mixture of both, which is great, because I get paid to go do these excursions, and I have to pay to do them as well. So.
Right. So let's get into the backstory a little bit as to how this all came to be. Were you the type of kid that was always out there with a camera in hand photographing, or was it something that kind of came as you were growing up? Where was the inspiration?
My dad gave me his camera when I was about 18. So at that point, I really wanted to be a golf pro. I was going to be a golf pro. And
I wanted to be a golf pro growing up too.
Yeah.
I grew up caddying on a golf course on Cape Cod. And
nice.
Yeah, it was just every single day I would wake up, I'd work from 7 to 1, I'd get lunch, and I'd play golf until like 9 o'clock at night. Yeah. And I always wanted to do it. And the golf pro at the club that I grew up, who's a very, very close friend of mine, was like, if you want to play golf, you don't want to be a golf pro. And I was like, okay, then I won't do that. He's like, you end up just spending all your time working at a golf course and never getting to play.
That's right. It's a much better way to play golf, for sure. Being kind of, For me, my father, I wanted to go down to the United States on a golf scholarship, and I went to him, and he's like, well, I will support you if that's what you want to do. And, we're there for you. And then he says, but, education at the end, you really, really think that you can do it. So I started thinking, and then I went to Lake Placid, and he gave me his camera, and he said, oh, just take some photos. And then I came back and I said, I want to be a photographer. And he says, so, and what else? You're not just going to be a photographer, are you?
Right.
So it was really funny. Not really, but I was like, yeah, no, I want to be a photographer. And then we researched the schools, and fortunately in my city, I had the University of Ottawa that had a fine art program. And also our college here, Algonquin College, had a photography program. So I started at Ottawa U in the fine arts program.
Oh, cool.
It was really, it opened my mind to different ways of thinking for sure, but it was giving me the technical skills, because really I wanted to open my business. I wanted to have a studio. I wanted to learn more about the darkroom and that sort of thing. So I left university and then went to college and started my business in between there. So, yeah, I've had my business and I've been a photographer for over 30 years, which is pretty crazy.
God, congratulations.
I'm sure you're not even 30 yet, so.
I'm almost there though. I'm a year away.
So I've been a photographer longer than you've been alive. How's that?
Yes, I know, but yeah, it's a weird thought. The big 3-0 coming next year for me. But
it is. It is. I know.
Yeah. Anyways, I could go down that path forever.
Yeah, but, exactly. Wait till 4-0 and wait till 5-0.
You know, I talked to my parents about this a lot, and all my friends too, where it's such a bad rat trap to get caught into, because I know I'm going to be like, oh my God, I'm 30. But then when I'm 40, I'm going to be like, oh, I was so young when I was 30. And when I'm 50, I'm going to be like, oh, I was so young when I was 40. And then like, I know there's like 90-year-olds out there who was like, oh, when I was a young and thriving 75-year-old. So it's like such a stupid thing to get caught up in.
No, but you do, because that's where you are in your life, right? And it's you're not thinking about being 40, you're thinking about being 30. And then when you're 40, you think about being 30. And then when you're 50, you think about 40. Yeah, it's a funny thing, but
it is.
It's I wouldn't change anything for the age that I'm at, and for all the experiences. And so it's been an amazing career, and it's also been something I've been able to do that I love, right? When you're able to do what you love and you have the passion for it, then it makes all the difference.
Oh my God, yeah. I agree. I'm hoping this podcast will work out in that way for me. But we'll see.
I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will. It's great to talk to you, and thank you for having me.
No, thanks for being a part of it. So when you were at Ottawa U, was there a point when you're like, I really want to start focusing more on wildlife? I mean, I know you have your other work as well, but when did the wildlife kind of enter the picture?
Oh, the wildlife has always been in the picture, no pun intended. But as a photographer, you have to do, especially as a young'un, when you're 20 or less, you're not proven, and so you have to do everything to make a living at photography. I did anyway, and most people, I think, have to. And I did the weddings and I did the events, and I actually started video production, which is quite interesting, because at that point there was nothing really on the middle end of video. There was the low end, right? And then there was this high end. It was a high end, like $500,000 end, right? So I was able to come in the middle side of things, and back when I remember I had an Amiga computer. Anyone out there listening who was in this stage, and I remember the first time you could generate a title on a computer and transfer it to a VHS.
Wow.
You probably don't even know what that means. Anyway,
no, well, I actually I think I am in a very weird age group where I think it's like plus or minus 5 years from where I am, where my entire childhood, I had none of this technology. But like as soon as like high school hit up until where I'm at now, like I was adopting it with everybody. So like I kind of know both sides of things. Like, I mean, all my home videos are on VHS and stuff. And unfortunately, my parents never put titles on them.
Well, it was too expensive. Yeah. I was so excited that I could do this, but then I needed a gen lock to get them from the computer to the VHS, and then that was another $3,500. Like everything was just so it was so expensive, and it was so hard to do. And then they would title, and then they started to move. Like you could scroll the title up and down. It was amazing. Oh my God, all these things that I remember. And then at one point, when we were doing our first video productions, we actually had to stencil our titles. I mean, there was no way at that, unless you're investing $500,000 in getting a title onto. So you had to film the title that you made. in order to have a
Whoa.
title.
Yeah.
It was that bad. Like, it was that old,
Then it becomes
was
more like
pre-
it's like a technical skill as opposed to like a fun, creative type of outlet, right?
Well, especially when you're self-learning, right?
Yeah.
So I was self-learning through the whole process as well. And anyway, and then that technology started to grow. And then, I was at one point, I think my company, I had 13 people on contract, some part-time, some full-time. And we were doing 115 weddings a year.
Oh my
Now,
God.
and you got to know that most of our weddings are from June until August, right? Or September, because
Yeah.
we have such a small season. Well, from Massachusetts, we don't have a big summer season.
Right.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. I was 24 years old, working 100 plus hours a week, and that's all I was doing. But, I was making money. But then the technology, when we got to digital and everything started to change and shift and move in different directions, the cost of upkeep and new investment for both video and photography became so huge that I just decided, okay, I went as far as getting a whole digital editing system for the video, which I paid like $30,000 for, that you can now do on your cell phone.
Right.
And it was crazy, and it would move the VHS machines. So it was the same kind of platform that you have now on like Premiere Pro
Right.
or any of the video editing softwares, but it would move the VHS machines up and back and cue them. And,
No way.
yeah, so it was doing that, but with VHS or beta tapes. Yeah,
That's
and that was
crazy.
I know. I'm dating myself terribly, but
No, but it's fascinating.
wild.
So you went from kind of your dad handing you a camera to go to Lake Placid to shortly thereafter running a close to $1 million business with 13 people under you and all of that stuff. That's amazing. That's the dream.
But it was tough, and it was really tough when things started to shift. I mean, the loss of money that you have, it's like buying your cell phone and then, the next one comes out a month later.
Yes.
Right. But you're talking about that kind of investment and to upkeep it, it was just crazy. And then digital, when the first digital camera came out, I had the Nikon D1X. And when I invested into that, I never touched film again. And then by that time I had given up the video production side of the business. So yeah, that was it. I'm going to stay with film, or with photography, and just saw the potential of what digital was to offer. So
how did the whole thing with Nikon happen? Because you're a Nikon ambassador. Was that something where these cameras were always speaking to you and they reached out, or was it?
No, it's just all timing, right? It's one of those dots, and it's kind of how the 30-year career, and you can start to see how those dots are planted and or seeded, and then how one connects to the other. And really, I've shot Nikon my entire life, and we have a Nikon professional service program, and the rep from Montreal was coming to Ottawa and said, "Why aren't you an NPS member, and can I come and see you?" And it just, we met, we hit it off, and then they asked me to speak at an engagement here in Ottawa. I did that, and then they started the ambassador program right after I think the United States did as well.
Okay.
And then, so then they asked me to be a part of the program. So that is a dream.
That's awesome.
A dream position for sure. Yeah.
So you're doing all this videography work, and are you at this time? Are you doing wildlife here and there when you can?
Yeah. So it's whenever I could, whenever I had time. Unfortunately, in those early ages, I was so busy doing what I had to do to make a living that the wildlife, connecting to nature and being outside was so. It's always been such a part of my life, and that's probably why I love golf so much as well. It's just because you could be out there, right? It's so beautiful, the drill.
100%.
Yeah,
just completely disconnected.
Yeah, completely. And and then when I started to calm down a little bit, which actually calming down to me is not really, no, it doesn't happen. But when things, I just started to invest more time outside and to do wildlife, and like the Instagram photo of a Ginny girl. We're going to keep going back to that because I think it's a thread that, it's through the story. You don't have to go far. You don't have to go to these wild, exotic places. You can, and if you have the means, but if you don't, like just go out in your backyard, find a squirrel, find a bird, find anything that is the normal in your everyday, and try to make it unusual, And that's one thing. To go back to Ottawa U and the creativity part, and that's one of the things that our teacher did is he said go to Bank Street and photograph it at all times, and try to create something different that you see every day. Go out in different climate. Go out in the snow. Go out in the rain. Go out at night. Go out in the morning. Go out in the mid of the day.
Right.
And that's exactly what I'm doing. That's exactly what I teach now as well.
Well, there's just no excuses as there used to be, right? Like before it was like, oh, well, videography is so wildly expensive. Now it's on your phone. And, even like I think with any traditional business, when you think of, oh, well, you used to have to advertise on television and over the radio. And if you wanted to get a product made, you'd have to get molds of it done and all this. Now you can 3D print something, or everybody's like, I have the best business idea, but if only somebody gave me money to fund it. It's now, well, if it's good, throw it up on Kickstarter. And if people like it, they'll pay for it. But I think it's a really important thing that people who are thinking like, oh, I would love to do wildlife photography, but I don't know if I can pay to get to these places. I mean, you've been everywhere in the world, and your most popular photo, or at least recently popular photo, was taken in your backyard. I think that's it's a really cool perspective for people to have.
Well, and you build your portfolio, and then you can also build your experience as well. Because if, taking shots of birds is like, if you can take a good shot of a bird, it's a good way to practice, or a butterfly, or, the smallest things, or your animal, and then work the lighting around it. There's so much that you can learn just in your.
Well, that's important too, is so that when you do end up going to those exotic places, you have the skill set to be able to execute when you're there. Because I mean, if you weren't filming the robins in your backyard or photographing the robins in your backyard, good luck getting the polar bear from a mile away, or however far. Miles, probably exaggerating. But anyways, back to some of the exotic places. Can we talk a little bit about your recent humpback whale trip in the Dominican, getting somewhere a little bit warmer, and talk a little bit about that?
I went to Africa in February, and then Dominican Republic for the whales in March. So it's nice to go from the cold climate to the warm climate for sure. I love both. The humpbacks, they're in Silverbank. It's a national park outside of Dominican Republic. It's a part of Dominican, but it's almost like between Dominican and Turks. So it's a national park. It's an area. It's a protected area for the humpbacks, and there's about 7,000 they estimate that go into this area, and they're there to mate and breed, and calve. So there's lots of whales around this area. So you take a mothership, it's probably a 120-foot boat, and you go out 9 hours, and then you anchor, and then every day you go out onto these small tenders, and you're in search of humpbacks. And sometimes you can have very intimate close encounters topside, and then if you're with whales that want to stick around, pretty much when you're seeing the humpbacks on the surface and they're floating around the top of the water, they're breathing, right? They're coming up to take a breath. And if they're passive and they're hanging around and they allow us to be close, that's the key, right? Mm-hmm. Is that they're not going away from us. And if they're comfortable with us, then they'll go under the water, and then your guide will slip in off of the tender and he'll swim over. And if they've settled and they're beneath the surface sleeping, he'll put up his hand, and then you all slide into the water. And then you are with the guide on top of the water, on top of the whale. Like it's I get so excited. I'm there again. Yeah. So you're snorkeling. You're in a wetsuit. It's about 78-degree water temperature, and then you're hovering over top of this whale, and you're looking down, thinking, I'm on top of a 45-foot whale. And then if it has the calf, every 3 to 5 minutes, the calf will come up to the surface. And sometimes it can be 10 feet from you. And then it will breathe. And then sometimes it will go back down to its mother, or else the female will come up to the surface. But when she does come up, she's literally feet away from you. Maybe.
Are you snorkeling or?
Yeah, you're just in snorkel. You're passive on top of the surface, like you're hovering. And yeah, it was the most unbelievable experience. It's my third time, but this one, it was a little, with wildlife photography, I try to go with little expectations because I like to be surprised and wowed.
Right.
And I don't like to be disappointed, right? And we all know that wildlife photography, you don't always get what you think that you are going to get. I think you go there thinking because you've maybe seen images or you've heard, and you're going to an area where there has lots of whales or lots of bears, and sometimes the weather can get in your way. Sometimes they just don't appear. And for us on this trip, it was really hard because we had high winds, and some days we had 3-4 foot swells in the water.
Wow.
And you're jumping in the water with a whale and you're in these swells. And, those two things combined are a little tricky. And you're trying to, the adrenaline, you're trying to take photos, you're trying to make sure that you're aware of because there's 10 people in the water with you. There's so many things going on. And for this trip, it really came down to a mother and a calf at the first hour and a mother and calf at the last hour.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, for a week trip.
Oh, really?
Yeah. For a week, not an hour of the day. It was, an unbelievably fantastic experience that happened the first hour of the trip. Everything in between was hit or miss. And it was, the waves were too high, or, the whales weren't sticking around, or, we had some breaching and it was far off. Like nothing really was significant was happening. And then the last hour, we had a mom and a calf, and we had these huge waves. And she was fine with us, but because of the waves, she didn't really like our boat being close by.
Right.
So our guide kind of said, well, if you want to see the whale, you have to get in and swim to it, which wasn't the typical behavior that we were in. So when we got to the whale, she went vertical and she opened her pectorals to us. It was like she was saying, here I am, and embracing us. It was incredible.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was really special, an amazing encounter.
Do you ever struggle in those moments to balance taking photos and experiencing it?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But it came to, I want to walk away with something,
Right.
Because in the past, when I've been there were much more experiences and encounters. So this time I went and I said, see, I had expectations because I had been there before, right? So I went and I said, I want to experience these animals too. Like I don't want this, I have a big aquatica system with the D800 and 14 millimeter, and I just wanted to take that away and have more time and intimacy and encounter without something in between me and the whale. But it was so far and few.
Yeah,
that never even happened. So again, it was just, with wildlife photography, you go and sometimes you can go and have these most prolific, unbelievably fantastic, over the top experiences. And then you can go in and be completely skunked or, limited with the experiences that you do have. But it's those experiences are, it was sandwiched between amazing and amazing. So everything else in the middle, it's okay because we're, I don't know, in the Dominican with whales on a boat. Like you can't
it's not bad.
Yeah.
And are you sleeping on the mothership and then taking these boats out?
Yeah.
Are they nice accommodations for the most part, or is it
beautiful? And you're fed amazingly well. And
oh really?
Yeah. And then the best is at the end of the day, you come in, you're exhilarated. You're just exhausted because of all the adrenaline rush. And then you go out, have a shower, and then you go up on the fly deck and you have a drink and you watch the sun go down.
Oh my God.
So,
yeah, that's
right?
nice. There's no complaining in that scenario.
No.
But I was also talking to my friends about this, back to my previous question, which is last year, it's actually exactly a year ago this week, I did a month-long trip around like 7 national parks in the Western US.
Wow.
With me and my best friend went around and we daily vlogged the entire time, just because it was just fun to like, I mean, looking back, it's amazing just to have the videos. It's just such a nice keepsake for the trip. But everybody was saying like, are you enjoying yourself? Like, why don't you like relax a little bit and not make these and like enjoy the fact that you and your buddy are doing all this stuff? And I was like, in a weird way, I almost appreciate it more when I'm doing the videography, because you start trying to pick up on the beauty of things a lot more than just kind of just going through the motions. And I think a photo is a lot like that too, because you're always like, when you're not behind the camera, you're looking at the lights, you're looking at kind of the subject and figuring it out in a way that you wouldn't be. So you're almost like more present in a weird sense when you're doing that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I totally agree. And people, don't you ever want to just put your camera down? It's like, well, no.
Especially with some of those animals that are like, you're really not even going to be seeing them quite as well if you're not looking through a 500 millimeter or something like that.
Exactly. And then you have your own, it's your own view, it's your own vision, and it's between you and the animal and the place you are. It's not, you're not sharing it with anyone else. It's your intimacy. And I love that. I love that part. You know, and like you said, I think it opens your mind and you see way more. And how often have you shot and somebody said, well, I didn't see that. And they were standing right next to you.
Right.
Right? Or where did that? I didn't see that. My husband says that all the time. I was with you. I didn't see that.
There was time I went to Yellowstone once, and I was just driving up and down the roads, and you see people pulled over, and you're like, what are you looking at? And then they show you like through their scopes, and you're like, there's no way in hell I ever would have found that, even if I had a scope with me. It's amazing, like the level of skill that's involved in some of that stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So keeping in the warmer climates, you said you went from Africa to the Dominican. Was that the order? Mm-hmm. Where were you in Africa?
Went to Tanzania. Have you ever been to Tanzania?
Oh God, I haven't, but I'm dying to. I want to do Kenya and Tanzania really badly. Mm-hmm. Actually, I'd say I want to do everywhere. Uganda.
I know, right? The gorillas. Okay. Sign me up. If you're going, let me know.
Anybody that listens to this podcast series is going to just think I'm full of bullshit the whole time, because all I do is I'm like, that's my dream. But they all are, like, in a certain way. But I haven't been, to answer your question, to Tanzania. Okay,
let's go to Uganda. Let's go to Uganda. Let's go see the Mount Gorillas.
Oh my God, that would be.
Okay, let's go.
I want to go tomorrow. Mm-hmm.
I'm with you.
But what were you doing in Tanzania? I always struggle because when I was 12 years old, for some reason I don't know if I did like a geography project or something, but I always said Tanzania. And so now every time I say Tanzania, I have to pause so that I don't sound ridiculous.
Well, it's also, some people say Tanzania.
Oh, really?
Tanzania. Yeah. So I have to stop myself too. I say Tanzania. Yeah.
Tanzania sounds good to me.
Yeah,
I'll go with that one.
We're going to go with that. It's only you and I right now. Everyone else can weigh in after.
They probably will. Were you there on assignment or with a group or?
Yes. So I took a small group from Adventure Canada. So they were all Canadians. And we went on a 2-week adventure through the Serengeti. So we did the Eastern Serengeti, Central, Southern. We did the Ngorongoro Crater. And then ended at this glorious place called Gibbs Farm. It's a coffee plantation. And it was, again, I couldn't wait to go back. I was in Kenya 10 years ago. So it was something that I've always wanted to do and to go back and photograph. And especially with the new cameras that are out now. When I went there the first time, the cameras were as good as they are now, let's just say.
Yeah.
And I was just really anxious to see another part of Africa, and I loved Tanzania. I absolutely loved it. And I'd go back in a heartbeat. And there it was not even believable how much wildlife there was.
Really?
It was just in the crater. It's the smallest for the area. It's the largest concentration of animals I've heard on the planet. Crazy. Like, it's not even believable. And that all these ecosystems are within this little crater, and there's a little forest, and then there's the salt plain, and then there's this little water area. There's hippos, and there's elephants. There's no giraffes, and there's zebras and wildebeest, and everybody. They all had babies. They were all giving birth. And So there were babies everywhere, and there was this beautiful light, and lions and cheetahs and hyenas, and it was just like everywhere you looked. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So
It was
it's like the
incredible.
opposite of the Dominican trip.
Totally, completely opposite. Completely. Yeah. So,
And so what does a
was,
day to day look like in that trip? Like you,
oh, it could range. And you know what? With this trip that we did, it was great because there was culture and tradition involved as well. So we visited the Masai Boma and where they did some.
cool.
Yeah, that was really neat. And we got to meet and hear the stories and see the basket weavers and that sort of thing. So throughout the days, there was typically a visit to one of the communities, and one of the, either the Boma or, the women making baskets. And then the other time we were either going to point A to B or else going out just looking and in search for these amazing creatures like the leopards. And we went to the hippo pool. It was the hardest thing to leave. I mean, we were just looking at a couple hundred hippos, and it was just, it was so
Have you
beautiful.
ever seen that video of a hippo that's chasing a boat? I think it's
Oh, I don't know.
it is insane. I'm gonna link it just so people can watch it.
Okay.
It's a guy. He's in Africa in some waterway on like one of those fan boats, and he's flying. And like you see them go past this hippo, and then like 20 seconds later, it's swimming at a speed you could not imagine, and jumps up and tries to like grab the boat. It was one of the most I hate describing things that clearly you just should watch the video, but it is watching something that you always just like picture as this like big tubby like kind of thing going around. It was flying through the water. It's terrifying, but so cool.
They say that there's more deaths by hippo than any other animal,
Yeah, I've heard that.
right? Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
They're just very
Yeah.
ornery creatures, I guess.
Oh man, I wouldn't want to be close. Well, we were pretty close, but not on land. They were all sleeping too. So
Okay.
yeah, I wouldn't want to come face to face.
They are
with him.
beautiful though.
Oh, they're so beautiful. They're just so big, and every one of them has such character, right? And the giraffes and the elephants and such close proximity as well. And then we had been eluded by the male lion. And on the last day, I said to my guide, okay, so, and I would just be like, this is what I want. You know what I want. And then sure enough, like 3 minutes later, we had 2 male lions right next to our Jeep.
Really?
So yeah, it was awesome.
And how
We didn't
big is
see
the
any
like
kills.
the sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay. We hadn't seen any kills. So they were on the hunt, and then they passed over us and went down a hill. So we didn't see anything happen after that.
How big is the expanse of like the crater area, or like where you're looking at these animals? Because my thought is like, with people who are going on safari and stuff like that, are you seeing like a lot of cars everywhere and stuff, or is it just like a massive expanse of land that it's like pretty intimate?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it really depends on where you're going.
Yeah.
The crater, we went in at 4:45 in the morning, so we were there for sunrise. And by the time we left, there were a lot of vehicles in there. So we had stayed very close to the crater side. Thompson Safaris has a camp that's not far. I think we were in the crater within 5 minutes of leaving there. But other than that, in the other areas, sometimes there were maybe 4 or 5 vehicles if we found a leopard or a lion.
Right.
Other than that, though, it was pretty far and few between. Like we really, yeah. And the first camp we went to is, I think Thompson owns 16,000 acres or 12,000 acres, something like that. So it was just us on this
That's
land.
cool.
Oh, we had everything. We were having a campfire and cocktail hour, and we had 7 giraffes come up.
Oh my
hey,
God.
how's it going? Yeah, it's just not even believable, really. You think that somebody's plopped you into this backdrop or this fake scene or something, because you're looking at these magnificent creatures going, how is it possible that we're this close and that we're here? It's what a gift to be able to see that.
I always equate it to how when you're a kid, you always grow up like obsessing about Pokemon, and I always be like, what would it be like to have Pokemon all over the world? It's like, they kind of are. You're just not going and seeing them. Like, you're appreciating them for that.
Yeah.
I mean, thinking of like how strange of an animal a giraffe is, and the fact that you can go and chill on a campfire and see 7 of those things walking up to you is just, it's an amazing thing.
Well, and one night we had the blue blood moon rising. And I had known that going there. I had been told that from this beautiful Indigenous woman here that I was photographing. And so the first night we were in this Eastern Serengeti camp, and it was the private one. And I had my guide take me to my camp to get the camera. And then all these hyenas were howling. So I walked back, and my nephew was meeting me in the bar area. So I sat down and I put my camera on the table, and I said, you know what? There's hyenas out there. Let's just have a drink instead for now, and then we'll see. Because really what I wanted to do is photograph the stars. And I didn't really know where the blood blue, where the moon was going to rise. Anyway, so the long story, the gentleman, the camp ranger, came over, and he didn't speak very much English, and he pointed to my camera and then told us to come. And he's like, come. So we went out, and we're walking now where all the hyenas are yelling, and in the darkness, and we're going further and further and further into the bush. I'm holding my nephew, who's your age. I'm holding his hand now. Okay, I haven't held my nephew's hand since he was 4.
Right.
And we're walking, and we're looking at each other going, okay, there's hyenas everywhere. He's taking us into the bush. And we came around, and we saw this beautiful acacia tree. And he had set up a mat, and he started pointing, because his English wasn't very good. And he was pointing. And what he was doing, he was pointing to where the moon was going to rise in between this acacia tree. So right in between the trunks. And then all of a sudden I saw this faint glow. It was an orange glow. And so I set up, I had a little tripod. I set it all up. And all of a sudden the moon started to rise right in between these limbs.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So then he had a flashlight. And he wasn't giving us the flashlight. I wanted him to paint the tree.
Right.
So trying to tell him now, because I had a 10-second exposure. So trying to tell him in English how to paint the tree. Anyway, it took some time. I only fired off a couple of shots, because once the moon got to a certain level, it wasn't, the shot was gone. But finally we were like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, go back and forth with the light. And so he finally got it. So he was able to paint the acacia tree, and then with the light, and then the stars, and then the clouds came in, and the hyenas were howling in the background. And
is that on your Instagram?
Like,
I'll link that below.
Yeah. It was unbelievable, and what a gift that this gentleman, he saw my camera there. I never told him that I wanted to photograph the moon. He, and that he took that initiative, and then he brought me there, and he was just there with his bow and arrow.
Wow. Jeez. You're like, he was so nice, or you got eaten by a hyena, and you're like, worst decision ever.
There's hyenas. He's like, far away. And then they would howl again. We're like, okay, there's hyenas. Anyway, so it was one of, a real gift, and one of my favorite photos from the trip as well. And I got to experience it with my nephew, which was super fun as well.
That's cool. Does he do photography?
No, but he was anxious to go out, and we were going to do a time lapse actually of the stars. But anyway, I think we got even better. I think that's what we got was even better. Yeah.
How long were you there for?
2 weeks.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
So were there any particularly interesting takeaways or observations from your time with the Maasai?
They're happy. They're really happy people. And, it was really hard because, we get a fly on us, and we're flicking it away, and, they have flies in their nose and their eyes and their mouths, and they live in such conditions that we couldn't even imagine living in.
Right.
But they're happy, hardworking people, and it was a gift for us to be able to go and speak to them and to learn about their life and to spend time with them. So I always find it a blessing when we're able to go into somebody else's environment and actually learn from them.
Was there a lot of parallels between that and the Inuit that you spend time with up north, or is it like significantly different?
I would say it's different for sure. But again, when I'm able to spend time with the Inuit and to be out on land with them, or to be in their homes and hearing about their cultures and their traditions, and for them, I think it's so beautiful because they're Canadian. They live in part of our country.
Right.
that they've lived there for thousands of years. They've been around for way longer than we have, and they've
For
lived
sure.
in extreme situations. So, it's what it be able to sit down and have a conversation with them, especially elders, and to hear about their life on the land. It's extraordinary. It wasn't that long ago that they were born in igloos and they were living off the land,
Right.
and not in communities.
And that's probably a good segue into your Project North work. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I love to talk about Project North. When I first went out to Pond Inlet, I went out to the flow edge. So imagine we're at the 71st parallel, I think it's 71, and you're at the northeastern side of Baffin Island. So you're the top of the world. And we were going out to the flow edge, and we were going out to live with the polar bears. But we had a little bit of time in the community before we went. And then when we came back, I had another day there. And I was quite taken by the children, by the community, and their love of hockey. They love hockey. They're huge hockey fans, and they were playing on the streets, and you'd see kids playing in the pond, or you'd see them with their hockey sticks on the road and whatever. They were always out playing. And when I went into the store and I saw that a 2-liter carton of milk would sell for $18, or there was a watermelon for $25, and
What?
yeah, there was a green pepper that cost $10. Yeah, the cost of shipping up food and having produce up there is so extraordinary.
But do people buy it?
Well, it's somehow, and in limited quantities.
Yeah.
And a can of Coke, depending on when the sea lift comes in, a can of Coke can go to $4 or $5, $6 a can as well. And yeah, so you could, first of all, I was taken because it's in our own country,
Right.
and that this is the way that these people are living. This is what they have to pay for food.
Right.
It's just, I think, completely wrong. And so I was inspired by another photographer many years ago that I heard speak, and she brought up hockey equipment, and it was donated from the Toronto Maple Leafs. So I called up Adventure Canada. I was going up with them that fall, and I said, can I bring up some hockey equipment? And they said yes. And from that point on, it was a used equipment drive. It was so successful. I came back and I said, okay, let's continue this. And I had enough people who wanted to help and who wanted to support the effort, that we actually had donations coming in that I never even imagined. And since that time, that was close to 10 years ago, I never thought it was going to be a one-time event. It was going to be a one-time give. And because we continued, and because of the support of, First Air, it's our official airline sponsor, Scotiabank, who've supported us right from the beginning, and all these companies that have supported us, we've now been able to donate over $1 million of brand new hockey and soccer equipment to, I think, 30 northern communities in Canada.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So again, it's like one of those things that, holy, you have one idea, you have basically, let's just do this once. And you have this idea, and because of the support of so many people, we've been able to do extraordinary things over the last 10 years.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's it'll be fun to see when one of the kids that you donated that to makes the major leagues.
Right? Yeah. And we brought up, because of Scotiabank and the NHL, we brought up the Stanley Cup 4 times to numerous communities.
That's cool.
Yeah. And with NHL alumni as well. So very popular hockey players like Marty McSorley, John LeClaire, Lanny McDonald, who's everybody's favorite, Mark Napier as well. And last year, Natalie Spooner came up with us, who's a great Canadian Olympian hockey player, and she plays on our national team. So, yeah, it's really cool to be able to see these kids and these adults alike just in awe of the fact that they're seeing the Stanley Cup.
I always think it's funny how I grew up in Boston, so there's like the huge Boston-Montreal rivalry.
Oh,
but
yeah.
They always hype up like the America versus Canada side of things when it's like 90% of our players are Canadians.
Are Canadian, exactly.
Which I always thought was funny because
Yeah.
it's always tough because then the Olympics come on and obviously I'm rooting for the U.S., but I'm like, oh my God, those are my guys.
Yeah, there are.
Yeah.
Wait a sec. Yeah, and there's a lot of Boston fans in Ottawa, I have to say as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We're doing pretty good right now, so we'll see.
Yes, you are, and we're not.
Let's keep it up in the Arctic. When we talked briefly before, you had mentioned ice grizzlies, which I just think are an amazing phenomenon, and I would love to hear your experience with those guys.
Oh, it's the only place in the world. See, I say this to all Canadians when I speak. It's like we have the most hidden treasures in Canada. But up in the high Yukon, there's a place called Bear Cave Mountain, and it's a fishing branch. And it's the only place in the world that you can see these ice grizzlies. And they call them ice grizzlies because there's a late salmon run, and the air is getting so cold that when they're fishing, the water is hitting their fur and freezing. So by the time that I think I was 9 days there, and by the time that I ended, it was down towards minus 25 Celsius. So it was pretty darn cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you wearing in these elements?
Oh, God, I had double. Yeah. At that point, I had double of everything because you're on the land with them. Like you are spending the day. You went in for lunch, but the majority of the morning and the afternoon was on the land, and you had to stay low. You had to sit. You couldn't move. You had to be very, very quiet because you were sitting in areas that the grizzlies would come to fish. But there was also the possible opportunity to see moose and wolves, and so you had to be very still and very quiet. So in that temperature, and you're not able to move, you had to wear multiple layers, let's just say.
Oh my God, jeez.
Multiple layers. And then you had to be very prepared for their arrival as well, because it's kind of like polar bears, and that they're just there. They just, you think that you're going to hear them or see them, or they just appear. It's the strangest thing. Anyway, you're sitting there, and then all of a sudden there's an ice grizzly 20 feet from you, and they're not interested in you, and that's one of the things that's so important about wildlife. And when you're in their environment, that, you're respectful to them, and that you're not, if your camera wasn't ready and they're looking at you, you couldn't lift up your camera. You couldn't show any signs of aggression or spookiness, or you couldn't move quickly. You had to make sure that you were very calm. And if they weren't looking at you, you were then able to pick up your camera very, very quietly. But if they were looking at you, there's no movement, and you're just waiting for them to do their thing. And then when they're busy fishing, then you're able to make your move to your camera. So you had to be dressed extraordinarily warm. You had to stay very, very low, and you had to be very, very quiet. And if you did all of those things, like, you had some pretty amazing intimate experiences with these grizzly bears. So at the end of that week of being there, there were grizzlies that had so much ice on them, and they walked. It was like a chandelier. Like they would walk, and you could tink, 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 tink. Yeah.
Oh my God! So you don't want to hear that sound right behind you.
No, and he did.
So is there, when that's going on, is there an element of fear there, or are you kind of just like embracing it and really enjoying yourself, or is it a little bit of both, I'd imagine?
Yeah, a little bit of both. And I was glad that I saw The Revenant after. But I was glad because, there was one time when there was an ice grizzly called Sophie. Again, you're with your guide. He, in Phil Trapani has never had in 25 years anything go wrong. But obviously you had that, that element of fear when you're, feet away from a grizzly bear, and it's staring at you. But Sophie wanted to jump from this little island of snow to exactly where I was sitting. So we stared at each other 5 feet from like eye to eye. And she wanted to jump where I was. And all I could do is just stare at her. Because I was like, you're not coming here because we're here. And Phil behind me is like, come on, Sophie. I'm talking a very, very low voice. Like, that we're sitting here. And you can't come here. So she ended up jumping behind me. But then she walked up and went right behind my girlfriend to look out at the river.
What?
And now I'm looking at my girlfriend, and she's looking at me, and I'm trying to, like, with my eyes say, she's right behind you. Don't move. Like, just don't move. It's crazy.
Oh my God. So you're legit looking at a grizzly covered in icicles, It's 5
Feet away.
5 feet
Yeah.
from you
Yeah.
and begging it not to come towards you.
Yeah. It's like, okay. And not
Ooh.
moving. Yeah. Not moving and not being defensive, so I spent a lot of time, even in spirit bear country, which we can talk about, but when you're in those situations, it's again, just being very, very respectful to the animal and the environment and not causing harm to either one of you, and not, I think I'm more afraid of walking down my cottage road and having a black bear coming out of the bushes while I have my dog. I mean, that situation is scarier to me than sitting in this more or less controlled situation where, there's an understanding, and she's busy or they're busy eating salmon. They're hungry. They're doing what they don't want to eat us. The only time that they would attack is if they felt threatened. So they're eating their food. It's not like we're hanging on to food that they want.
And I mean, granted, I know very little about pure grizzly biology, but I'd assume, and I've heard through a couple of books I've read, that a lot of times it's when they're more agitated that because they can't get food that they start attacking and stuff. If it's like early season, like right after hibernation or something like that, where the berries aren't growing quite as strongly or something like that. Whereas if you're right next to them when they're just chowing on salmon, they're happy as can be and not.
That's what they're interested in. They're not interested in you unless you're a threat.
Is there anywhere in Canada where grizzlies and polar bears overlap?
There is. In a couple of years ago, actually, I was up in Sax Harbor, and I was with a guy that shot the polar bear hybrid. What do they call it? The polar grizz or whatever. There's numerous names. So there was a definite inbreeding between the polar bear and the grizzly bear.
Wait, what? I've never heard this before. It's a mix of the two.
A mix of a polar bear and a grizzly bear. It had the coloring of a polar bear, but it had the same ears and nose and
no way.
Yeah, as the grizzly bear.
And there's only one that has ever been photographed?
And shot, from what I know. I don't know if there's been another one that's been photographed, but once you get up.
Wait, do you mean shot as in like killed?
It was killed, yeah.
Why?
I'm not sure why they had killed it, if it was part of their hunt or if it was endangered or not. They were in danger. I'm not sure. I have a feeling that they were shooting it because it was on a hunt, or they were on a hunt.
It's like the only animal that anybody's ever seen like that, and somebody killed it.
Well, and again, I'm not entirely sure of all this. So, like that, I think they've been seen elsewhere, but it's in the Northwest Territories region where the polar bears are coming down and the grizzlies are going up a little bit more.
That's really cool, though. I didn't even know they were seen together, let alone breed together.
And I don't know if I've ever heard of anyone seeing a polar and a grizzly at the same time, at the same place. But I know in Nunavik that they see black bears and polar bears sometimes fishing on the same.
Oh, really?
Same river.
Have those ever made it together that you know of?
That I don't know. No,
that would be a cool looking one.
Yeah. I'm
trying to imagine.
Well, the spirit bear is a black bear. Is a white black bear. A white. There's a recessive gene that they have, so it's a black bear, but it's white.
Yeah, I was talking a little bit to John Marriott about those because they're absolutely beautiful animals. Can you talk a little bit about what your experience is like going into the Great Bear Rainforest and seeing them, and just what the whole experience is around that ecosystem? Yeah,
for years people would ask me if I had gone to see the spirit bears, and it's something that I'd always wanted to do. Like we have our checklist, and it's plentiful, and it's definitely something that I want to do. So it was 3 years in the making, and I ended up going last fall, and we went with a company called Ocean Light 2, and I know Mary travels with them as well.
Okay.
And we did not only the spirit bear, but we did the Great Bear Rainforest. So we had 2 days on land with the spirit bears. And again, for this trip, I specifically went thinking, if I see a spirit bear from 100 feet or more, I'll be really happy. Like just even seeing one would make me happy. I went with zero expectations. What we didn't expect, we had a small group. There were only 8 of us. We actually had a spirit bear spend a lot of time close to us.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it was pretty amazing. In such proximity. Same with black bears. So there were on this river lots and lots of black bears, as well as a couple of female spirit bears, and we had everything on that trip. Though, once we got outside of the area of the spirit bears, we had one morning we had 14 grizzlies all around us. We were in a zodiac. We had humpbacks, orcas, sea otters. We had elfin seals. Birds, eagles, more eagles than I've ever imagined in my life.
Really?
Yeah, we're surrounded by eagles. All kinds of. It was one of those trips like Africa, and unlike the Dominican, it was just the most prolific wildlife experience I've ever had in Canada.
And what John was saying too, that I think is really cool, is that, I mean, it's an effort to get up there. So it's, I mean, differently than what I was suggesting, like when you go to like a safari in South Africa or something.
Oh,
so different, right? Because you're kind of just out there by yourself.
Yeah, and the rain and the elements. I mean, it's crazy. You're in the rainforest, and you've got difficult lighting, and then you've got difficult rain situations. When you're trying to stay dry, your equipment's trying to stay dry. You've got lots of things happening at you, coming at you all the time. So it's not an easy shooting experience whatsoever.
And when you do some of the stuff with humpbacks and stuff, have you ever wanted to go scuba?
Yeah, have you ever done it?
I haven't. I've actually never scuba dived, period.
Yeah. I did my lessons. And then I never got my underwater training or certification, unfortunately. And, people who do dive and who do underwater photography, I've seen their work. And they all say it's just a whole different world full of life and color and so much. So it's definitely on the list, but I'm so busy doing what I'm doing right now. It's just not high on the priority list.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm spending so much time on top of the water.
Right. Yeah. What is the next 5 years looking like? Do you have any projects lined up that you're excited about?
I'm excited about one. I'm not ready to talk about it yet.
Okay.
And it's an environmental message for sure. But yeah, so I'm excited because it's been a while. I've done 5 books and I'm always up to something, and I've taken a hiatus on that a little bit and put more effort into my travel in Project North, and now it's time again to do something a little bit extra. I've always put something into my work as far as philanthropy or doing something more with my photography.
That's amazing.
Making a difference. Yeah, well, and I think we have a great gift as photographers too,
right,
to make a difference and to offer our creativity and our imagery to charities that are in need. So it's always been a big part of what I've done in my career. So there'll be a charitable aspect to it for sure. And continue. I've got Iceland circumnavigation coming up in July, and I'm working with Adventure Canada. And then I go back to Greenland and Labrador, which is also, Greenland is an extraordinary place. And Labrador, I think, is one of the best kept secrets of Canada. And then I go back to Cape Churchill. And then I'm doing a South America cruise with Regent Seven Seas in February. So
everybody in Labrador right now is wincing, like, please don't tell anybody.
Oh yeah,
we don't want anybody here.
But again, it's not an easy place to get to either. It's not so easy. But with Adventure Canada, they go through the fjords on the top of Labrador, through the Torngat Mountains, and there's only one way in, and it's by boat. You can fly in, I guess, but to really absorb and see it, it's by boat. It's pretty extraordinary.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
And you also see, we see narwhal up there. You see polar bears up there. You see grizzlies. You see lots of caribou and icebergs and these beautiful 4,000-foot cliffs. And the fjords go forever, and it's extraordinary light as well.
So I'm going to hit you with a couple rapid fire questions because I know we're getting a little closer here. So why do you do what you do?
Why do I do what I do? Because I love it. I'm passionate about it, and I'm always looking for that next great shot. And it's an addiction, and I love every minute of it.
If you had to go back to one specific photo that you would say is the most meaningful, and this is like not like, oh, one of my family, like a nice thing, but more like like one shot that was in the wild that you're like, this was like the highlight thus far in my wildlife photography career, what would you pick?
There's a couple, but because you're asking me for one, I would say my walrus on the move image. I had gone to can I tell you about it, or?
Yeah, I would love to hear it. I think I know the one you're referring to, but
we're running out of time or not.
No, we got plenty of time.
Okay, no, I was on an island with 10,000 walrus, and we had walked up to them onto their level, and we had been photographing them up above, looking down, and then I asked if we could go down to their level, and I was within about 10 feet or less from the walrus, and there was nothing really happening. The light was dull, it was flat. I mean, there were 10,000 walrus, and every once in a while they would come up and fight against each other, but nothing was really happening. So I said, okay, we're done. This is good. And then we walked back to the boat, heard this thunderous sound, and I turned around. I was hand holding my 200 to 500, and I just shot because I knew something was happening. And honestly, I saw all the walrus going on a move, and they were all going into the water. So something had spooked them from up above. Mm-hmm. And they think it might have been a polar bear. It might have been a guide. I don't know. Something spooked them, and they all went on the move. And the sandstone from underneath them came up, and it created this ethereal type prehistoric look. And wow. Then now I had movement, and then just ever so slightly the sun started coming through the clouds. So the light changed, the moment changed, the movement changed, the motion of the move. I don't know, everything came together. And it wasn't until I looked at the back of the camera and I went, okay, now I've got that shot that nobody else in the world has, and that's the one. Like, it was just so extraordinary in my mind, because I saw in the back of camera what I wasn't even able to see. And it was just one of those, why it's so important that you take the chance all the time, and how important it is to have your senses wide open and available. Because if I didn't take that chance and I just stood there and watched it, I wouldn't have this shot.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was really extraordinary.
It's interesting too, just because it is so, you think of photography sometimes as such a planned practice, right? Like when you're looking at shutter speed and aperture, to have something happen, like the highlight of your career, something that happened just like that, is amazing.
Yeah. And so unexpected. And if I hadn't been ready, or if I didn't take that chance, it would have been gone. And it's also when everything comes together, from the light to that movement that I had with the walrus. Unlike here, where I'm in the studio and everything's so controlled, like you said, to take yourself out of that and just allow things to happen out of your control. That's what gets you, and that's what makes me want to keep going back and look for those experiences all the time, because I think as photographers, we all want that. That's what we're all waiting for and wanting.
That's amazing. What would you say is a more unexpected animal that you've really enjoyed interacting with or photographing?
The small creatures, putting on a macro and going in close to butterflies, or I don't like spiders very much, mm-hmm. But, caterpillars, or I don't like frogs either, but, just, again, they're so small and they're so important to our ecosystem, and they have such texture, and their eyes, they're so fascinating. And just to go into that small little world, not this vast, beautiful place, but this other beautiful, intricate, intimate place. That's what I love. The unexpected, because you just don't see it with your eyes.
Yeah, sometimes the more and more macro you look at anything, it just gets like, you start, at least me, I start going down a spiral of like, oh my God, what world do we live in? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's mind-blowing stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody listening is probably like, this person's insane, but I just think I think even like sometimes you just like look at like your own I don't know. Anytime you look at something very up close, it's just,
Yeah.
it creeps me out a little bit. So the last question I'm going to steal from Tim Ferriss, who is a big podcaster that I love. And he always ends his podcast by asking if you could have a billboard on the side of the road that imparted one message, or even if you wanted to put one photo on that billboard that would impart a certain message that you could kind of disseminate into the world, what would it be?
Be happy.
I like that.
Just be happy.
I mean, what else is there? I think that's a good,
Be kind. Be happy and be kind.
I like that. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. I'm going to link below in the show notes all of your books, because people should definitely check those out. Anything else that people should know, to where they should find you, what they should keep an eye out for?
Yeah, my website, michellevalberg.com, has the travel that I'm going to be doing, speaking engagements, and I try to keep it updated as much as I can with all my recent work.
And can anybody
easy,
sign
right?
up and do the and do a trip if that you're guiding?
Yeah, if there's room and there's space, and yeah. So
That's cool.
South America next year, I believe, is sold out. And Adventure Canada's Greenland, Labrador, they sell out quickly, especially with the smaller trips like the Kootsmatine or the Spirit Bears, because there's only eight available.
8 spots, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not so easy, but it's not to say that it's the last time, or I don't have other opportunities that come up as well.
Thank you so much for being a part of this. I'm very jealous of everything that you've gotten to do and get to do and are going to do.
Thanks.
But really appreciate your time again. And to everybody, until next time, stay wild. Thank you so much for listening. I honestly cannot express how much I appreciate you taking the time. For all information regarding this episode's guest, social channels, books, how you can support, etc., please check out our show notes. If you enjoyed listening, please subscribe to the podcast. We are everywhere that you can find podcasts. Subscribe to Escape the Zoo on YouTube, follow Escape the Zoo on Instagram, like Escape the Zoo on Facebook, and please share with your friends. It honestly goes so far and means so much to me. And lastly, if you'd like to be emailed with each new podcast and any other major Escape the Zoo updates, visit escapethezoo.tv and sign up for our email list. Thank you.